Hi, I'm FishOnAHeater.
And I'm DPhiE250.
And I am Michael.
And this is PvP Corner, the PvP podcast that is successful in all three leagues. Hey, Michael Steranka from Niantic, thank you for joining us. How are you?
Good. A little jet lagged. I just came back from a big family vacation out in the Philippines. So
Ooh, wow.
I don't even know what time it is over there. But yeah, if I'm a little whoopy on this conversation, that's my excuse.
Yeah, I feel that. I've been there before. I've had to perform under that kind of jet lag pressure. And yeah, I know how difficult it can be. So for anyone who might not know who you are, have heard your name before, I think by this stage you've got to be like the most public-facing member of the Niantic Pokemon Go staff, I would imagine. I can't think of anyone else more so.
Yeah, that's probably right. For better or for worse, But yeah, you might be right about that.
So, do you want to tell us about who you are and how you fit into the Niantic space?
Sure. Yeah. For those who don't know me, my name is Michael. I'm the senior product director on Pokemon Go. And yeah, I've been at Niantic for about 8 years now. I think I'm counting that right. I joined shortly after Pokemon Go first launched, actually. And so, yeah, it's been a really wild ride over the last 8 years. In terms of my role, I currently oversee a number of things within the game, primarily everything that we consider the live game. So anything that you see in terms of new Pokemon that are released, what's happening every season within the game, any big live events that we do like Go Fest or, of course, Go Tour that's coming up in a couple days over here. And more recently, the entire game design team has been integrated into my org as well. So I'm really helping out with upcoming features and product roadmaps and things like that that are in development. So there's always so much going on in this game, and I feel like players only get to see a small fraction of what happens. And so, yeah, I'm trying my best to wrangle all the chaos behind the scenes and have something that's presentable and fun that everybody can enjoy on the public.
That's awesome. Yeah. What is your background in gaming? Like, what kind of resume does someone have to like get to a job like yours?
Yeah, I've had a really interesting, I think, career path. So out of college, first of all, I graduated in this, really bad recession time, and pretty much everybody that I graduated with really struggled to get a job out of college. I'd always known that I wanted to work in the gaming industry, but I didn't know what that actually meant. And I think a lot of people who grew up playing games that want to work in the gaming industry are in similar boats where they don't know really what it means to work in gaming. But I was very fortunate that my alma mater had these career fairs, and the year that I graduated, I saw that PlayStation was one of the companies that was going to be at that career fair. And so, I prepared my resume. I got all dressed up in like a suit and tie to go to the career fair. And, I waited in line to talk to the recruiters. And before I could even say anything, they looked at my resume and said, "Oh, sorry, we're only looking for engineers at this time." And, I had my heart set on this, and I basically was like, "Hey, that sounds good. If you don't mind, I'd love to just give a quick elevator pitch. If, something opens up in the future, if you could like keep me top of mind," kind of a thing. And so, I gave my whole spiel, and a couple weeks later, I got a response back from the recruiter saying like, "Hey, actually a contract role opened up on our experiential marketing team. If you'd be interested in that." And so, like I mentioned, this is like a really terrible time to get jobs in general. And, for even a contract role to open up in the gaming space was such a, huge opportunity for me. So I immediately took that. And I spent the next that eventually converted into a full-time role, thankfully. And I spent the next 7.5 years at PlayStation. And so while I was there, I was on the experiential marketing side of the house. And so I put together things like the Road to Greatness, tour, where we would go to different music festivals and whatnot around the country to showcase, the latest and greatest PlayStation games. But I always really loved these sort of like more creative ways of coming up with experiences for fans to enjoy. I think that's kind of rooted in just my own like personal background outside of work. I've gone to Comic-Con every year since like 2004, I want to say. And I've always just really enjoyed these fan spaces where you get to connect with other people who love the same types of things as you. And so, um, uh, yeah, at PlayStation, I got to bring a lot of fun, creative things to life. Some of my favorite projects were the Last of Us One Night Live, where we took the voice actors from The Last of Us and brought them on a stage in Broadway to, act out the various scenes from the game, and we, live streamed that on, YouTube and whatnot. And then the final like big project that I really worked on at PlayStation was this annual convention called PlayStation Experience. And, I was sort of in charge of figuring out how we can connect that in-person experience back to your PSN account. And so, worked on this collectible card system where we worked with all these like first and third party developers to create these collector's cards that, as you would go throughout the different booths and engage with those developers, you'd receive a card from them. But we also had this surprise setup for attendees where your PSN ID was tied back to your badge on registration. And we had these sort of like RFID scanners throughout the space. And so when you went back home and you logged into your PSN account, not only did you have that physical card that, you collected to, show, to show for from the event, but you also got a number of like digital goods gifted to you in your account back home that was, specific to that developer's game. So anyways, that was maybe a little bit of a long tangent on the PlayStation side of things. I, thought I would be at PlayStation for my whole life. It was like a dream come true type of a role. And then I saw the announce trailer for Pokemon Go. And I think, something probably everybody who's listening to this podcast has seen. And I've always been a giant Pokemon fan. And I was very fortunate in my life as a kid. I actually lived in Japan when Pokemon first came out in Japan. And, it was a huge deal, and it like consumed me as a kid. And then the year that I moved back to the United States was the year that Pokemon came out in the United States. So I like lived through that phenomenon twice. And ever since then, I'd always played every single game. I was like very, I went really deep into like battling in the different main series Pokemon games too. I, always was very involved in grassroots communities for those games, and lots of different fan websites. I spent most of my late teens and early 20s contributing to and participating in. So yeah, when Pokemon Go was announced, I was like, oh my god, I have to find a way to work on this game. And I was able to finagle my way into a conversation with our CMO at the time, Mike Quigley, and I was interviewing for a role that I didn't realize was a role for Ingress at Niantic. And after talking to him, he was like, hey, we can keep putting you through the interview process for this role, but based on your background and, your affinity for creating these, fan experiences, that lines up really well with what we want to build out in Pokemon Go, which is live events. And so, would you be interested in more of a new role to come up with the live event, like strategy and, put that all together for Pokemon Go? And, yeah, again, feel very fortunate to have had these types of opportunities that just perfectly line up with my my interests and whatnot. So, jumped to that opportunity, and over my time at Niantic, I've had the the fortune to create things like Pokemon Go Fest, Community Day, et cetera, et cetera. And I started off in the marketing side of the house, but Niantic was so small at the time that, no matter what role you were in, you kind of had to wear multiple hats. And so I was the only person on the marketing team that was also given the keys to our sort of like game development, game design tool set, and was able to like build these experiences directly in the game. And so over time, I sort of like officially shifted over into the product development side. And yeah, that's kind of where I sit right now. But I also still have marketing team members on my team, because I've always felt like marketing, especially within live events, needs to be so tightly integrated with the product development side of things. And so far I think we've put together some really fun experiences for players. Sorry, that was a really, as I was talking, I was like, man, I need to wrap this up.
No, I mean, people who are listening to the audio won't be able to tell, but we've been beaming this whole time. Like, this sounds so fascinating. Like, I love the level of creativity that you have to bring to the role. It sounds like just no 2 days are the same, that it's just so fascinating to be a part of that.
Yeah, for sure. It's been such a dream come true for me. And, literally as we're talking right now, I'm technically in Pasadena for the Go tour that we're about to have in a couple days here. So, it also has given me this great opportunity to travel the world and really like go to a location and think about like, how can we bring this location to a life that's very unique and true to Pokemon Go. So yeah, it's been a fun ride for sure.
Yeah, and we really appreciate you coming to us, live on location, and taking that time, especially right after your vacation. Speaking of which, we sent you a lot of listener questions, and there was one that kind of felt like a fun icebreaker at the top of the show. That one listener sent in. What is your favorite vacation locale? Like, are you like the beach, camping, hiking, forest, mountains, major metro, staycation? Like, what is your vibe for vacations? What do you like to do?
Yeah, I think it's something that's changed for me a lot over, the years. And as I've gotten older, I've kind of like mellowed out a little bit. So, these days I definitely prefer more sort of like beach vacations. Hawaii's my favorite vacation destination. So, last year when they announced that Worlds was going to be in Honolulu, I was like, I gotta be there for that. But yeah, I really like having a more like relaxing style of vacation. And especially I have a toddler who's almost 2. There's not a whole lot of exciting, really fast paced vacations that we can do with a kiddo that age. So yeah, we really like go to Hawaii, stay at the, poolside or the beach side, and just relax for a few days. But yeah, in a past life, I really love just like traveling to new places. I wouldn't say there was like a type of place that I really preferred or enjoyed, but just the act of going somewhere new and discovering, something about that place and that community and that culture was something that I really sought out. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm exactly.
How about you two? Do you have a favorite, type of vacation spot?
DPhiE.
So I really like the beaches too. I gotta pull up. I live in Wisconsin, and I don't know if you're familiar with the weather here, but let me just pull up. I've been posting it in our Discord community. This morning it was -8, but felt like -17.
Oh my God.
Earlier this week, it was the feels like was -26, which is cold enough to close schools in my area, because the kids who have to like wait outside for the bus or the kids who have to walk, like it's like physically like not safe for you to be outside for more than a few minutes. So warm. I like beaches. I like sand. Even though I think Japan for Worlds was a little too hot for me. Like that was muggy that year in August. That was humid and that was a lot. But overall, like that was very sweaty. The battles were sweaty, but also just the the entire place was just very sweaty. So generally, like any place that's warm, like I'll take it.
For sure.
And I'm the same as you, Michael. Just anywhere that I haven't been before. Just give me some sort of new experience. Which there are so many places that are still yet to tick off on the list. You know, you haven't been to Spain yet, or Germany. I haven't been anywhere in Africa. I'd even want to go tick off Antarctica at some point. Go to every continent.
No, you know, it's so hard to get there though, and very expensive too.
So it'll be probably the last one on the list.
Yeah. No, at some point I would also like to have been able to check off every continent at least. So, you know, Antarctica would be the tough one to do.
It would be, that'd be the legendary shiny.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm going to actually throw in an extra icebreaker, a non-pre-approved one. I hope this is okay, just based on your previous experience with PlayStation. Favorite 3 video games?
Oh, okay. So number 1 is Final Fantasy IX. You know, I have just like such fond memories of that game, and every now and then I'll go back and replay it, and it really holds up. Like the story is phenomenal, and the characters you just fall in love with in a way that, like, you know, I think is rare. So that one, you know, holds a special place in my heart. Journey is another one for me that was kind of it almost like changed what I thought video games could be. I don't know, for anybody who hasn't played Journey, it's a very short game. You know, you can complete it in just a couple hours, but you sort of set out to climb the top of this mountain off in the distance, and you're just this sort of like mysterious character that's sort of like cloaked in this you know, this hood, or you know, I'm not sure exactly what it is, and you have like a scarf and whatnot. But as you start on this journey, you actually get randomly paired up with someone else playing around the world, and you have no way to communicate except for by like sort of emoting or like dancing around. And you could go on this journey by yourself and like make it to the end by yourself, but it's so much more fun to do it with a partner. And it just like becomes this really emotional experience in a way that I didn't expect for such a, you know, seemingly simple game premise. And you find yourself getting like really attached to this anonymous person that you don't even know. You don't know anything about them. You can't even communicate with them. But you kind of almost feel like dependent on each other, and you want to stick together, and like you're going through this rugged terrain and like the things that are trying to pull you apart. And I don't know, just really, really fascinating game. I highly recommend that for everybody, for anybody who hasn't played it. And then, you know, I guess, the third, I couldn't not say Pokemon, just as a general, this is a general franchise or IP. And, you know, if you had to like twist my arm and make me pick a favorite Pokemon game, it would probably be Pokemon Silver. Just because, you know, I thought it was so cool at the time to, you know, once you finish the Elite Four of that game, to be able to go back to Kanto and see what's happened in that region as years have passed since the first games came out. So, but yeah, I couldn't not say Pokemon in the top 3. So
yeah, totally.
I know, Fish, you're working through like the top 100 games list. So I know that's probably, I'm like, I heard the question, like, I know why you're asking this.
Yeah, we've
better see all got 3 of those on that list. But yeah.
So Journey is on there at number 29 on the list. I've just got to check Final Fantasy 9 though. There are a bunch of Final Fantasy games.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy 14 says that's it's not important anyway. It's and Pokemon Gold and Silver was on the list as well. I know that.
Great.
Yeah, so you've got good taste. Is what we've come to
Good.
understand.
I'm glad. To hear. Sometimes I don't know, but yeah.
All right. Should we start talking about Go Battle League? Oh yeah, no, actually no. I should mention just as a prelude to this. Michael has been brought on to other podcasts in the past as kind of like a during more difficult times, and has been there to kind of be asked the hard hitting questions and answer for some things that were some frustrations for players at the time. Our intention with bringing Michael on was just to. We've always known he's been a massive fan of PvP. It is, I believe I'm not misquoting you here, like it's your favorite part of Pokemon Go, is that right?
Yeah, I don't know if that's a quote of mine or not, but absolutely. Yeah. That's that I don't know. It's maybe my own just like competitive nature. I grew up as like a swimmer and water polo player, and so I've always been sort of I've had a gravitational pull towards anything competitive.
Yeah. So that's what we wanted to bring you on here for, just to be a fan of PvP with us for an hour and a half, however long we happen to be here for.
Yeah, sounds great.
So let's go ahead and talk Go Battle League. So this last week was Open Master League and Love Cup. I did not play as much as I wanted to, and I am now in trouble because my goal is always to finish the 500 wins, and I am not there yet, and I am a little nervous. I'm on like page 4 of 5.
Okay.
So I'm like committing, like every day. Like after this recording, I'm gonna go sit. I'm gonna find a great league team. It's possible. I did the math.
It's doable. Yeah.
It's doable.
I was trying to think through the math in my head, but yeah, that's totally doable.
It's totally doable to knock this out before the season ends in 12 days. I've got 12 days and 13 hours. So technically like 13 sets I can do of 25 or 13 days of 25. Definitely doable.
Yeah.
I wish I would have played more because the Love Cup team that I ended up finding I really liked. It was Druddigon in the lead with a Galarian Slowbro safe swap. I do not have mine with Surf. Mine has Scald. I didn't want to use the Elite TM on it. When Scald is like, it just hits a little harder. It takes a little, like, didn't feel like worth it to me. As I sit on my pile of like 30 Elite Charge TMs, and then Skeledirge in the back. And Skeledirge is the only Pokemon that runs something that's more than 3, like a 3-turn fast attack that I enjoy using. Because like Fuecoco is my baby, and I love Skeledirge. So I was really excited to get a chance to use it, and I had so much fun. Like I like this team. I wish I would have played it a little bit more, but I am vibing down around 2,500. Hopefully, with some dedicated play, I'll be able to at least hit expert this season.
Yeah. Again, definitely doable, but
yeah. For me, my tenure on the leaderboard lasted 1 day. I got up to past the 2,200s, and then just went on free fall mode.
Oh, no.
So yeah, I've lost 400 points in the last week, and part of it was in the last couple of days of Love Cup. Part of it was in the last couple of days playing Open Great League. Both teams that have brought me success in the past are currently not doing so. So got to figure that out and try and right the ship before the season ends. I was playing one particular battle against, because like when you do get up to legend leaderboard type elo, which I sound so weird saying like as a leaderboarder, but you do start seeing names, like you match up against names you recognize, and one of them was LNDS Rajev.
Ooh,
yeah, and it was a tight battle. I did have the upper hand until right towards the end, where my Hisuian Electrode had a wild charge banked, but very little HP left. Out comes his third Pokemon, a Galarian Slowbro. Poison Jab, it just takes a single Poison Jab to take me out. I hesitate just long enough that I don't get the Wild Charge off.
No.
And then it's neither of us had used a shield at that point, so it's my Dradagon with 2 shields versus his Galarian Slowbro with 2 shields.
Yeah.
Slowbro wins that. And I'm like, that's the difference. That is why one person is like 19-time regional champ, and I've spent a total of 1 day on the leaderboard. But it also, like, it's to bring it to a more positive place. Like, I also have been saying for a while that the difference between like ace and veteran and expert is not that much more. Like, the margins are razor thin, wire thin.
Yep. Yeah, they totally are. But, you know, even though the margins are so thin, I also think that that's really what distinguishes someone, you know, who's like consistently on the top, right? Is they're able to find those razor thin margins and capitalize on it. And, you know, having just a 1% higher win rate makes a significant difference, you know, on your overall rating as a whole. I mean, if you look at even the best players on the leaderboard, they're all hovering, I'd imagine, around, you know, the sort of like 55 to 57% win rate, right? It's just like, how are you capitalizing on those moments where you are at the disadvantage, like, you know, our Jeff was against you, and like find that opportunity to flip it or capitalize on someone's like misstep, even if it's just for, you know, a split second. And I don't know, I think that's really such a cool facet about Pokemon Go's PvP. And I don't think a lot of people really fully acknowledge the depth there of the, you know, the importance of making these like micro decisions that maybe they'll flip the match, maybe they won't, but you do enough of those to get your average up high enough that that's gonna, you know, skyrocket you into you know, the next rating tier or whatever it is. So yeah, I don't know. I always find it interesting. And some of my favorite things to experience, at least in the PvP space, is whenever I'm watching, you know, the like a regional or an IC or Worlds, sometimes I'll be watching a battle like, oh man, this person is going to win for sure. There's no way that, you know, their opponent can beat them. And then every now and then someone actually flips it. And I just don't even, you know, in my like Doctor Strange, you know, looking at all the different future possibilities, I can't find that one path to victory, but someone on stream found it. And it's like mind blowing. You know, I'll like rethink that game and like, how did they, you know, even recognize that they could, you know, do this? And I don't know, people are on like another level sometimes. But
yeah, totally. And so I know for a while you personally had gone every season making Legend in Go Battle League. Is that streak still alive?
It's still alive. I did think that this season would be the one that I would miss because I wasn't planning on playing during my vacation in the Philippines. You know, we were at places where like the internet wasn't super stable, and I was like, I don't want to deal with, you know, malding like that. But I had a crazy run the week before I left, and I hit Legend literally the day before going out to the Philippines. So it was like basically like a 300 point climb in you know, 4 days or so in Open Great League. I think what I found is there tends to be like pocket metas. So like what you mentioned about, you know, the team that was like serving you so well previously is no longer super helpful. Like you might have like entered a pocket meta that's just like not conducive to that team, you know, succeeding. And the other thing that I've always found, and maybe this is just in my own head and it's just like a psychological thing, but I really feel like it's so much harder to climb in the like, you know, 2200 to 700 range. I feel like after you've crossed that threshold, you are matched up against really, really excellent players. But the thing about excellent players is there's a little bit more predictability in their team composition. And, you know, you can maybe have better assumptions on the types of, you know, advanced plays that they can make. Whereas when you're in this sort of like, you know, 2200s, there's like a mix. You've got folks in there that are just like tippy top, you know, players who just maybe haven't been playing as frequently that season, but they're like phenomenal. And then you have people that are like maybe a little bit more casual who, you know, got some really, you know, a lucky streak that like got them into that range with like really good team composition matchups and whatnot. So it's just such a harder grab bag to like assess within those individual battles. Like, what is the skill level of my opponent and what sort of assumptions should I make throughout the course of this battle? I at least personally find it way, way harder in that range than, you know, at the closer to sort of like legend and beyond range. But yeah.
That's a really good analysis. And yeah, and you kind of do have to make assumptions as much as it can, you know, get you caught in traps. When things are happening that fast, you've kind of got to rely on instinct and yeah, make assumptions on what your opponent might do.
Totally.
To help you win.
And I feel like I see those things again on the, you know, like regionals and IC streams so much at, you know, once you get into like day 2, you see people that will like do the no tapping for like multiple turns. And you're almost in this sort of like standoff of like, okay, who's going to like hit the charge move or switch first? And you can't play a game like that in the 2200s. You know, you will like trip and fall. So you have to know that your opponent is at that same sort of level to even like engage in those types of strategies, right? So yeah.
So can you let us know what was the team? What was the legend team in
Oh
Open
yeah.
Great League?
So yeah, I have to give a shout out to my friend I Play Tennis. You know, I was like very much like ping ponging in the 2500s for 25 to like 2700s for a while. And he was like, "Hey, you should try this team out. It was really successful for me." And it is lead Azumarill with Ice Beam and Play Rough, and then Diggersby and Shadow Driftbloom in the back. And Shadow Driftbloom is just so good right now. The Astonish buff, just like it's so tough for people who aren't prepared to, you know, to play around that. And so yeah, if you can like bait out the right things, if you can get, you know, a shield advantage, it can really like plow through teams who are like unsuspecting. But yeah, that one was an incredible line to play with. Getting up to like the, you know, 2700s, I was playing around with more Peko builds, and you know, Shadow Drapion is just so fun right now. It's like so spammy. And so yeah, I did the whole like Shadow Drapion double water strategy. I went with like, you know, I did the more Peko Talonflame combo, which was like super strong too. But yeah, I don't know. Lots of fun stuff in this meta that I was enjoying in Open Great League for sure.
I haven't actually heard of the Morpeko Talonflame core. Like, I haven't heard those two mentioned together before. Like,
yeah,
really
they synergize really well. So, you know, just in terms of like type synergy, and also in terms of shield synergy, because both of them are like quite effective at grabbing shields from your opponent, or do really well when shields are down. And so yeah, and I think like Talonflame is also a really great natural answer to a lot of the mud slap, you know, Pokemon that are giving more Peko nightmares.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Sounds awesome.
So definitely give some team advice. Fish, what are you going to run for these last couple weeks in Open Great League? Or what are you thinking right now?
Well, the Great League, the Open Great League team that I was doing really well with before it changed to Love Cup was Shadow Jumpluff, Primeape as a pivot, and Galarian Corsola. I really liked the feel of Primeape and Galarian Corsola as a core. Just do not let Wigglytuff anywhere near it. Like occasionally there'd be like a triple normal team that would just take me out, like a Diggers Bee, Wigglytuff and Pidgeot, and I'd be like, forget
brutal.
Primeape I think I find plays a little bit like Drapion, where like
super spammy.
Super spammy. You take an opportunity to get just one extra fast attack, and suddenly that makes things even easier for when the next Pokemon comes in. Like you can be on, in the red in HP, but if you build up that energy, you can still force a shield out of the next Pokemon that comes in. So I really am a big fan of Primeape.
Yeah. I haven't used Primeape myself, but it's on my list of like things that seem really fun on paper to me that I want to try out. So
the warning I'd give is that rarely anyone ever shields the first attack. So like if you are planning to like build up to a close combat and bait a Rage Fist, like it's probably not going to work.
You're better off just getting the boost quickly.
And of course there are a lot of Pokemon that are popular right now that don't quite get KO'd by a close combat at full health, so you do have to be aware of health management on both yours and your opponent's Pokemon.
Right. Make sure to bring it in after you've softened things up enough.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
I did also try Shadow Drifloon myself for a few sets as well, and it's so fun. I agree. The only difference between that and Galarian Corsola is Galarian Corsola can take a punch a lot better. Punch is probably the wrong word. You can take a lot of punches, but like a hit, a charge attack,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Galarian Corsola is one of those where I don't have a good enough IV Galarian Corsola that I want to invest in yet, and so I'm waiting to get one that I can confidently sink my XL Candy and whatnot into. So,
what's the best rank you've gotten? So, sorry, go on.
I was going to say I've still hatched a grand total of 2, just 2, and like anyone who would want to trade would want them in return.
Right.
So I'm still kind of, it's too cold. It's too cold outside right now to go for a walk and hatch eggs. So a little bit of a slow burn for me.
For sure. I definitely tried to hatch a few when they were first launched. Let me see how many I have. Yeah, I don't have that many either. I'm sitting at 4. So yeah. Unfortunately, and none of them were traded. They were all hatched. So I still need to find some trading partners to get a better one.
Yeah, the big one that I was interested in when it comes to IVs was there's like a certain amount of HP that you need to survive. I forget whether it's for Alligator or Shadow for Alligator in the ones. Like you survive that extra Hydro Cannon with like 1 HP left, but the amount of HP you need is not one that you can get from hatches.
Right.
So that's why I think that's the important one to trade for.
Yeah. A couple of my friends were telling me some of those interesting matches that get flipped with the higher ranked ones that convinced me basically to not just, throw my dust and candy into any random old Corsola. But
Yeah.
All right. I think that wraps up Open Great League discussion. So that's all of this week. And then also next week, you can do Open Great League. If you're not playing Mega Master League, which is a crazy, crazy time for all of our listeners, taking a look at the PvPoke rankings to kind of show what they're predicting is going to be very good. Mega Rayquaza, just at the top. Dragon Tail, Breaking Swipe, Dragon Ascent. So not just 1, but 2 legacy moves. So be ready for that. Primal Groudon, Mega Gyarados, Primal Kyogre, Mega Latios, Mega Swampert, Mega Tyranitar, Mega Gengar, Mega Gardevoir and Gallade as well. And then some of the Pokemon because you can only have 1 Mega on your team. Yeah. So some Pokemon that you can kind of pair with those that are also looking really good, like Palkia Origin is still looking really strong here. we're also looking now with Unovator, you're going to be able to use something like Kyurem Black or Kyurem White, which also looks like it's going to be very, very good.
Yeah,
of course,
strong.
like Zygarde is not a mega, but it feels like it should be. Like, I'll never get one.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
you know,
I'm a little
that's
lagging
also
on
good.
that front too.
Should we do a so check?
Oh God, I got a couple from like that research where you didn't have to do a route, but you could get a couple cells. But no, it's still abysmal. I'm still only at 21, but it's better than before.
Yeah. I'm not even gonna pull up my game to look it up because I would be shamed so badly. But yeah, I've been slacking on the Zygarde myself, and yeah, and you know, it's totally on me too, because even going to and from work, there are like routes that I could take, but yeah, I just have never prioritized it. But and then every time a Zygarde comes up against me, I'm like, you know what, I should go do some rest.
All right, Michael, we have another listener question. So
sure.
What goes into making these metas? We just talked about like the Master Mega League. We just had Love Cup. Like, can you talk a little bit about like coming up with the themes, like what's eligible, what's not eligible in a cup? Like, how do you decide like, oh, we got to ban Shuckle here, or like we gotta, that's not going to work. Like Charizard, there's the door kind of things.
Yeah. So those are all fully designed by our live op game design team. And so every season we have a lead designer that is thinking about the season holistically, right? In terms of like, what are the in-game events that we want to host, what Pokemon are going to be featured there, what new Pokemon are coming out. And they will often try to think cohesively about what sort of like in-game events are happening, and you know, what can then be reflected in the GBL cups that we have going on. So obviously, Love Cup, great example. We just had Valentine's Day, and you know, the live op focused on Valentine's Day, and so thematically, it just makes a lot of sense. In terms of what Pokemon to allow and whatnot, the team's always trying to think of new, unique combinations that could be fun, that are, hopefully things that we haven't done before, or if they are things that we have done before, has the metagame changed enough to, refeature it and it will feel new and interesting again. In terms of like things to not allow, a lot of times we'll look at, when we have things like the, sorry, I'm blanking on the name. Is it like the retro? When we not retro. What is it
Remix?
Where the remixes? Yeah. So the remixes are an easy way to do that, right? Where it's like purely based on usage from previous seasons, but oftentimes too, using Shuckle as an example, right? Like if the total base stats that a Pokemon has is just far exceeding anything else that qualifies in that cup, we'll oftentimes take a look at that and be like, yeah, this maybe it won't be very fun to encounter. Now that being said, also using Shuckle as an example, we don't always catch all of them, and so sometimes we'll have a meta out there that's just like, oh, well, every game is going to take 5 minutes long because you're just sort of like chipping away, Shuckle to Shuckle. And, so we try our best to avoid things like that when we can. But sometimes some things do slip through the cracks because, we do have so many of these cups every season, and it's hard to catch everything, unfortunately. There are lots of Pokemon to consider. So. Yeah, hopefully that answers the question. Yeah, and totally. What I really like about how we design these seasons is, it gives those designers this opportunity to really, put their fingerprint on things and like, let their own like creativity fly and, think through again like how to create everything that's sort of cohesive and holistic together. And the fact that we have different designers focused on different seasons also means that, you get some lots of different and unique outputs from each of them that, we get to enjoy as players. It's like, oh, we haven't experienced that before. Well, it's because this is this designer's first time thinking through, this type of a combination. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it'd be cool just seeing those unique fingerprints on each new season as well. Like, I'm kind of wishing now that we had like a little signature designed by such and such, just to see like, oh yeah, this is one of Jerry's metas.
Right. Yeah. And I guess to be fair too, like it's never something where it's just like a singular person doing everything.
Yeah.
Like the team is all in support of that. But yeah, every season we do have a lead for each one. That's like, they've put together the general outline of what's happening, and then the rest of the team is filling in a lot of the details. But yeah, it's a good setup that we got, and such a great team that we get to work with. These are like some really passionate, not just players, but like gamers in general that are so creative, and just a pleasure to work with.
Awesome. So I want to get into a little bit of where you are live on location for our in-game events section. The big one, the main one, it's Go Tour LA, which is going to lead into Go Tour Global. So if we take a look at some of like the official announcement, I alluded to a little bit earlier, talking about like Kiram Black and White, which is really cool. Can you tell us a little bit, like, what is it like to put together something like this? Just like figuring out the logistics, like how are we going to fit people into this space, and how are people going to get there, and do we have enough food and water, and like how do we get all of those things? Like I haven't hard enough time planning like a dinner party and trying to like put all that together for like 6 people. Like how do you do that for like thousands?
Yeah. It is a lot, I will admit. And it's something where we've learned a lot over the years too, of like how to approach these types of things. But not sugarcoating anything. These major events like Go Tour, Go Fest, and now Go Wild area take anywhere from 8 to 14 months from start to finish to plan out and execute. And that includes, scouting locations that will work for us, doing initial site surveys with our network connectivity team to make sure that what is the existing network infrastructure in that park? How much extra do we need to, partner with cell providers to bring in order to facilitate the amount of players that are there? I think some people might be familiar with the very first Go Fest we ever did, which was like my first project. And, I thought I was going to be fired that day. It was a total disaster. It totally blew up in our face. And it's because we're kind of trailblazers in this space. When we tell Verizon and AT&T that we're bringing, 20,000 players into a park to enjoy Pokemon Go, well, back in 2017, they would kind of laugh at us and be like, well, we just hosted Obama's inauguration in that same park, and it had like 200,000 people there. So you're totally fine, right? But it's such a big difference. If you can't access Facebook while you're at, Obama's inauguration, no big deal. You'll post that photo later, right? If you can't access Pokemon Go while you're at a Pokemon Go Fest, that is the event. So yeah, lots of great lessons learned along the way. It takes a lot of time. There's so many details that need to be thought through. And we really try to bring the unique aspects of any particular park or city that we go to life for the players that get to experience that. And so we, as best as we can, we try to pull what's happening in the real world into the digital game and have that connective tissue be really, really strong. And we've added different types of experiences over time that, again, were just like learnings for us, right? We learned that, hey, most of the people that come to these events are traveling in from out of town. It's probably not the best experience if they're going to the same park, every single day, over the course of this. So here's the city experience, right? You're going to spend part of your time at this beautiful park that we've custom curated for you. But we've also created something that encourages you to actually check out that, city, and make sure that, like, if you're traveling in, you can be a tourist and you can, see all the fun sights and attractions while you're playing Pokemon Go. So yeah, lots of, I don't know a better way to say it other than there's like lots to think through and do. And, our team is surprisingly scrappy, I would say too. I've worked at places like PlayStation, and, the teams there are phenomenal. But we kind of like operate with like a fraction of the number of folks. And so I've been very picky about, who we hire and who we bring on, because every single person contributes so much to, making these things at the quality level that our players expect. And so, it's something that I'm deeply, deeply proud of. And I know that the team's incredibly proud of as well. But it does take a monumental effort. And now we're doing these, multiple times throughout the year. So, yeah.
Well, I've definitely enjoyed the live events that I've gone to. My favorite was the city experience for Osaka, because when you think about like the Kanto region, or I mean, like not the Kanto region, but just like the Pokemon world in general, a lot of them are mapped to like specific cities.
Yeah.
So like I got to play in the Goldenrod Underground. Like that's where I played.
Awesome.
In Osaka, and that was so cool to just like I got to go do the tourist thing, and like I met people. It was fun because like I was playing and people who didn't even really speak English would come up to me and like try to trade because they could tell like she's an American and she's playing Pokemon Go. I know why she's here.
It's one of my favorite things is, people have now created their own printouts of like things that they're looking for trading, the things that they have that they're willing to trade. And, it really breaks down language barriers so well. And it's like, I don't know, it's such a like beautiful and unique experience that I just haven't seen anywhere outside Pokemon Go, really.
It's definitely a unique community. What about like the deciding, I think you spoke to it a little bit more with the team, but deciding like the event themed Pokemon and like how to build out like the tickets and the like everything else for the event, like designing the events themselves.
It definitely depends on the event, right? So some events like Go Tour that are themed to specific regions from the main series games, coming up with the roster of Pokemon to feature is a little bit easier, right? Because it's like, we are taking direct inspiration from the source material there. But then that leaves a lot of open room for creativity beyond just like what Pokemon are you encountering. It's like, what is the actual experience that we're creating? And, that's where adventure effects were, kind of brought to life for the first time. This year, one of the innovations that the team has put together is this sort of event pass that you're going to get. And, if you've played other mobile games, you've probably seen similar things, like a battle pass, but rather than completing specific, research to get an encounter or a reward, doing different game actions will give you, progress on this track of like really, cool rewards and things that you can get from the event. And, one of the new things that we're launching as a part of that event pass is the lucky trinket, which you can use to, initiate a lucky trade sort of like on demand, basically with a friend. So very, very excited for that one. I really need to think through, what lucky Pokemon I want to prioritize for on that. But yeah, I'm like always excited with like the innovation that the team puts together at this point. And, that's one of the things that I really have grown to enjoy in my role, and something that I've also had to let go of a little bit is really letting this amazing team that we've built do their thing and be super, super creative. So, I've tried to peel back a little bit because I can have really strong opinions and instead, let the team sort of, let them cook, so to speak, and come up with these awesome ideas. But yeah.
So, Michael, taking a look at some of the Pokemon that are going to be featured, is there anything you would say from like a PvP perspective that would be really important? Like I would say for Master League for sure, like Pokemon, Kyurem, Black and White are going to be super important to keep your eye on. Is there anything else like looking at like Pokemon that are going to be in eggs or Pokemon in the wild that you think would be like PvPers out there should keep an eye on?
I think it's so that answer just like differs so much based on, your own personal collection. Like as an example, it took me way too long to get Tentacruel XL candy. So, I'd go to events and there would be Tentacool, featured there. And most people might be like, whatever, I already have that. But I was like so excited because like I really need to like, finally grind for the XLs for this. So yeah, the one I definitely just want to highlight is obviously the featured, Kyurem Black and Kyurem White. The team really tried to make sure that, those Pokemon felt very powerful, not just in PvP, but in PvE as well. They're going to be really effective in raids. And, we're also creating a unique adventure effect for them that's going to, be really useful for players in their Pokemon Go journey for many years after, they catch those Pokemon. So, yeah, I would say definitely focus on those because those are the new ones that everybody is gonna, gonna want and need. And then for the more like the Pokemon that are spawning in the wild or featured in eggs and whatnot, it definitely just depends like what your collection's at and like, what XL candy do you need, or, do you need a specific IV spread for your Pokemon that will hit certain break or bulk points and whatnot. But yeah.
All right. I know, like I was trying to look at some of the Pokemon that are going to be in like Winter Cavern, Spring Soiree. I like how it's seasonal because that was a big deal in Pokemon Black and White. So I was trying to take a little bit of a look. I say in the spring, like I see a lot of Pokemon that are really good in like Little Cup, like your Cottonies and your Ducklets. Summer Vacation. Not too much, like Dwebble I see for sure. A lot of our like PvP powerhouses don't really come from the Unova region as much as like I love the Pokemon here. But like Frillish, like Jellicent has some niche play. I saw Scrafties in Love Cup for sure. So there are some Pokemon, maybe not as many like the huge PvP highlights, but
well,
Druddigon is another one that like I used it.
Yeah. I was using Druddigon in, what was it, like Fantasy Cup or something? Yeah, there was something a season or two ago. Where
Dragon
like,
Steel Fairy, wasn't it?
Yeah. It's good stuff. I mean, but that's, I think, what kind of makes these events and those different metas super cool is the things that might not seem like they're top meta in Open Great League or Open Ultra League or what have you. You never know when something's gonna all of a sudden be just like incredibly busted in a more condensed meta. And then you're searching your inbox and you're like, oh my god, I transferred all of them, and what am I gonna do here? So yeah, I always am on the lookout for any Pokemon that I can get a good spread for, like need the XL candy for, because even if it's not great right now, it might be in the future. So
all right, so we can talk about the Pokemon that are doing great right now. If we move into kind of the Play Pokemon, the official tournament circuit, we just had an event this last weekend. Unfortunately, not streamed. It was a very small tournament, small special championship over in San Juan, Puerto Rico. And Mr. OutofPoket, a very, I would say, one of our most consistent battlers in the championship series, took the crown. took the crown and is now the San Juan Puerto Rico Special Champion. And you can kind of take a look. We can chat the bracket, but he took the finals. There was no bracket read set. He came in from the winner's side of the bracket and just kind of like worked his way through. Another big name that was in the tournament was Arceus Aurelius, who made it pretty far, made it to the winner's finals, but then lost in the loser's finals to, and I don't know how this person pronounces their gamer tag, but it's like Keg MPWTBD. And I'm just going to go with Keg, like the first three letters. That's how I'm going to do it. Don't know how everyone else is, but that's what I'm going with. Taking a look at Pocket's team that he brought to the San Juan Special. He brought a Wigglytuff. Shadow Kanto Marowak, which has just been a bully, I think, in the official tournament circuit. It absolutely went wild in San Antonio recently. Dugong, Shadow Drapion, the Galarian Corsola we talked about, and then the Shadow Annihilate. Keg, who is a Japanese player, brought the Azumarill, a regular Kanto Marowak, Dugong, Shadow Drapion, Talonflame, and then Superior. Anything stand out to you there, Fish, on like either of those two teams, or taking a look at some of the other teams like Arceus Aurelius, OG Blairstoys, Blepnir? Lots of really good battlers here.
To be honest, I think not as spicy regional as maybe some of the ones we've had. Like in previous regionals, we've been able to point at one person and say like, "Wow, they brought." Such and such Pokemon. I can't remember off the top of my head, but like, I'm not really seeing too much of that here. The Wigglytuff is a bit left of field. Occasionally you do see someone popping up with one and it just core breaks a lot of stuff. But other than that, I don't know. Are you seeing anything, Michael?
Yeah, I think, we're kind of at the point in this season where, we're like ending, we're at the tail end of the season. So I think what I've kind of noticed over the years is that once the metagame has started to stabilize a little bit, you tend to see a little bit less of the spice picks because, people have figured out that like, okay, these are the things that are really, really working well. There's so much more of a familiarity with those Pokemon that it's hard to catch folks by surprise with, something really off meta. So yeah, nothing super stands out to me there. It is a decent like variety in terms of like unique Pokemon across the 12 outline there, which is always nice to see. But yeah, nothing that I'm just like, wait, they used what? Yeah,
the Zapdos on I'm not sure how to pronounce this.
I think it's Chen-Yu. Because it's Chen-Yu back. It's Chen-Yu backwards.
That makes sense. That's probably another thing that we've seen, but not particularly often.
I would consider that very spicy personally. Yeah. Is it Shadow or regular?
That is regular. That one.
Yeah.
Which
okay.
Is even less common.
Right. Yeah, I remember that now. So I was scratching my head. Like, is there something I don't know about with regular Zapdos that is better than Shadow? I used to use Shadow Zapdos a lot in Open Great League because it was so fun and again, super funny. But yeah, do you all know if there's something I'm missing there?
I think it might be able to tank a couple matchups a little bit better. I don't know the ones off the top of my head, but I think it has something to do with being able to survive a little bit longer.
Okay.
Or like to be able to tank a hit a little bit longer.
Yeah. And I can relate to that, having brought I very notably brought regular Charizard instead of Shadow to my performance in OCIC, which I wasn't really able to articulate it that well at the time, but the point of that was that Shadow Charizard is better on paper, but it was really uncomfortable, feeling pressured to shield anything, like even bait attacks. Like you'd be against a Metacham, and even an Ice Punch would like depending on what your health was at the start of that matchup, like a nice punch might even put you down into counter range. They might, choose to shield it, double shield it, and then come out with a whole bunch of energy. And then what do you do then? So maybe that is the intention behind it, just being able to just feel a little more comfortable in a matchup, not have to burn those shields as quickly.
Yeah, makes sense.
Taking a look at this upcoming weekend, so the same time as Go Tour LA, we also have EUIC across the pond. If we take a look at our caster lineup, we are going to have for Go, we have Swagron, along with Amanda Lundberger, Will Dunphy, also known as Speediest Chief. We have Koning Lionheart, and then Zionic making his reappearance at EUIC. So some fantastic casters for the game. I'm really looking forward to see what they bring to it. They did a pre-show. Will was the one on the camera for that. And I really want to highlight, I'm going to put it in the show notes. He highlighted, and again, I don't have it quoted from him because I messaged him about it and he hasn't gotten back to me yet, but I was just watching the pre-show today and I was like, this graphic is genius. So I'm thinking Will came up with it and had the graphic designer like help him out with it, but it is so good. So the Go meta picks, he has it like a color wheel where you have your 6 core Pokemon in the center, and then you have like a complementary couple of colors of Pokemon that pair really well with them. So like your 6 core Pokemon, he's got Diggersby, Annihilate, Galarian Corsola, Shadow for Alligator, Azumarill, and then the Shadow Drapion was at the start. And then, for example, with the Shadow for Alligator, he pairs it with the Charjabug and Clodsire because they work so well together as a pair. We talk a lot about like really strong cores in Pokemon PvP, and I think this graphic does just such a nice job of like conceptualizing all of that and like making it really visual.
Totally. Yeah. Super cool. And Will is just so great. He's like a passionate, not just player, but caster. And the fact that he, conceptualizes things like this is like, I don't know, to all of our benefit, I feel like.
Yes, I've shouted out before to the video he did on type effectiveness and talking about like resistances and super effective damage. That was really done very, very well. So that's another one that I highly recommend people like look for on YouTube if type effectiveness is kind of an area that you're struggling with. But more in the pre-show, he highlighted a couple trainers from each region. I believe from EU, he kind of highlighted Colin 6, Zeej Wireless, Palasha as trainers to watch out for in NA. OutofPoket and Dunebug, I know were highlighted. I know he mentioned Marto and Richie from LATAM. And then for the like, oh my gosh, my brain. Oceanic region. I was like, you're a region. The Oceanic region, Rick Flareon, I believe, is going to be in attendance at EUIC. So another one to kind of like, it's kind of like a wild card for y'all in the Oceanic region, because we don't really see you on the official streams very much. So we know that you have great battlers, but we don't get to see a lot of it. So it's kind of fun when trainers kind of travel to where we do have the broadcast and we get to showcase them a little bit more.
Totally.
Yeah, for sure. Same with the players from the like Asia Pacific area as well. Like whenever you go to Worlds and it's like, oh my gosh, there's Crescent Angels, right? It's like, what? You have no idea how they play or I really enjoyed a couple years back. I was able to go to the PJCS tournament, and even the Pokemon that people brought were so different from what I was seeing from the play Pokemon streams. And I don't know. I think that's really fun and special when you get these sort of like region specific specializations or play styles that then come back into these like more global stages like EUIC, and you get to see how that sort of like fares among the mix. But you mentioned Marto. Obviously shout out to him for his big win too. I think like he's got to be at this point one of the most consistent players of all time, right? And especially when I think about like Worlds performance, he's just like always upping the game. So yeah, really
Yeah, I think
impressive.
he's gotten his invite like 4 or 5 times over at this point for Worlds this year based on his last Worlds performance, IC championship. He's got a regional championship. I think he's got a
Yeah,
special event championship as well. Like he's
yeah,
got like it's
it's crazy.
incredible.
Yeah, I always have so much respect for people that can stay that consistent for so long. That's why it's actually a little bit heartbreaking as much as I love Elite as well. You know, like I really want Rise to get that regional win so he can keep that streak alive too over the years. But yeah, he's got a couple more opportunities, of course. But yeah.
Yes, lots of other really good trainers. Amanda wrote a preview article as well to highlight the kind of the local European trainers, and then as well she highlighted all the international trainers I mentioned. For Europe, she also threw in Tonton Batus,
Oh,
who's really known for his spice picks,
he is so fun to
bringing like
watch. Yeah,
I really
and
liked his
very
run with
consistent as well.
Seeking. Yeah,
totally. Yeah.
Tauntaun is incredibly consistent, but yeah, that Seeking play, just he always has something like up his
It's
sleeve.
always,
It's just
yeah.
this weird core breaker. And then another very decorated trainer is Me Weedle, the only senior world champion for Pokemon Go, the one and
Right.
only,
One and only.
who's got that, the regional championship. He's the reigning EUIC champion, so
Yeah.
he'll be back, I believe, to defend his title.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that is going to be very good to see as well. So I'm
Yeah,
really
it's
excited to watch this weekend.
same. Yeah, it's going to be a sleepless weekend for me because I'll be going from EUIC streaming to Go Tour LA and then back. But yeah, it should be a lot of fun. And yeah, I also want to, you mentioned her already, but Paul Lasha, like, also so fun to watch. I think I can't remember if it was last season or the season before where she just dominated with Magnezone. After watching her performance that tournament, I like went and built a Magnezone team for Open Great League, and that's what ended up taking me to Legend that season. So
nice.
yeah, shout out to her for the inspiration there. But yeah, she's amazing as well. I'll be rooting for her.
Paula's one of my favorite trainers to root for. I love when she's like cooking up there and she just looks at the camera and does the cooking motion. It's very good.
Yeah.
All right. So, Michael, we wanted to ask you as well another listener question. Does Niantic have any goals in relation when you look at PvP and its inclusion in the official tournament circuit with Play Pokemon? Are those goals more, and if so, are those goals more like in-game goals or like out-of-game goals?
Yeah. When we first started talking to the Pokemon company about including Pokemon GO, it was just such a slam dunk decision for us because it's so part and parcel with the type of experience we're trying to create with this game, right? And Pokemon Go's never been just about like, oh, like catch Pokemon on your phone, right? It's always been about leaning into this incredibly popular IP and franchise in Pokemon to connect people to not just the world around them, but the people and the community around them. And so when you think about things like the Play Pokemon tournaments, that is that, you're getting fans together to experience this in person with each other. And so, it was a crystal clear, like no brainer for us to partner together and bring that to life. I will say, as it stands right now, something that I personally am very interested in is figuring out how we can build out the Go Locals experience more, because I really want to funnel more players into the sort of like bigger like regional and IC and worlds circuit. And I think it's a bit of a tough ask to have someone start at a regional, right? And oftentimes it's even cost prohibitive to do so, whether that be like the travel cost or maybe the entry tickets sell out or something to that effect. It's so much easier to convince someone to go participate in something at like their local mom and pop, comic shop, right? And so, yeah, I definitely want to figure out a way to expand on that with the Pokemon Company and create a really great Pokemon Go offering through that experience, because I really think that that's the best way that we can grow the circuit and get more people to be interested and involved there. So yeah, as much as I, personally am always tuning into all of the live streams, and, I haven't been able to attend as many in person as I'd, done in the past, now that, I have a toddler at home. The opportunity for growth that I see is more on those like local level, experiences. And, I want to build that up as much as I can.
Yeah, that's really exciting, and it's great seeing how I don't know so much about the local level, but at least at the regional level, like we are seeing those numbers, go noticeably higher each season, and I would have to assume that is having a flow-on effect at the local level as well.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, we definitely always want to see growth for sure. And like bringing new players into the fold is I don't know. I like I mentioned, I love seeing the familiar faces too, and I'm rooting for people to have that consistency over time. But you also want to have fresh faces in the mix too. That's like the new up and comer who's going to try to like make a name for themselves and prove themselves on the stage. And in order to like recruit folks like that, I do think that like having something that's a little bit lower barrier to entry, like a Go Locals, is a great place to invest our time and resources into building out.
All right. And so hopefully you're checking like, the Pokemon website for your local events, listeners, but also we have lots of regional events coming up all over the world.
Yeah.
Looking at the weekend of March 8th and 9th, we have 2 events, Fortaleza, Brazil, and Vancouver, Canada. Then towards the end of the month, Fish, this is your time, your countries, Brisbane, Australia. And then April 11th to the 13th, we've got Atlanta, Georgia in the United States. April 19th to the 20th, Monterrey, Mexico. And then we're going to have a special championship in Seville, Spain, April 26th to 27th. And that kind of rounds out April. We'll only have 1 month after that. And then NAIC, and that's wraps the season until Worlds. It's coming up fast.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you got to shout out the Pokemon Company Internationals event team. It is crazy how many of these they, put together all over the world. I'm always kind of blown away with what they're able to accomplish with that group of folks too. So, hopefully in that huge long list that you just, rattled off there's something that's reasonably close to everybody listening to go check out. I really think that the energy that you feel at those events are just like, you have to be there to really know what that's like. And it's just a magical moment for sure.
Especially if you have been involved in the online community, and so like meeting a lot of those people in person for the first time is a really great experience.
Totally. So when I know that first NAIC is when I got to meet a lot of my like online friends in person for the first time, and it was magical's the word. Like to actually like, oh my gosh, you're a real person. Like that moment is very, very cool.
For sure. Yeah.
All right, Michael, if you are up for it, we do have a few more listener questions to get to that didn't quite fit in with everything else. Are you ready to tackle some other questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, Fish, you want to start us off with the first one?
Yeah, look, I've been tasked with giving you the hardest question of the lot, and we decided to front load this one. What's the deal with regular and super potions? For me personally, I know I'm not every player, but like for me, I haven't used one of those since level 23.
Yep.
I'm basically just only ever needing the hyper potions and max potions. The super potions, regular potions, just taking up bag space. They get deleted instantly. Why are they there?
Yeah. Well, they're definitely there for, the earlier level players that don't have the super powered up things, of course. What's really funny though is I actually see more purpose for the super and regular potions than I do for like the distinction between like hyper potions and max potions, because it's like there's very few times where my hyper potion doesn't fully heal my Pokemon, and I like need that max potion. So I don't know, maybe there's some balancing or tuning that we can do on those items to adjust their effectiveness. But there's also something like oddly satisfying to me anyways, where you have just that little like sliver of damage and it's like, oh, I'm gonna use a potion on that. I'm not gonna blow my valuable hyper potion here. I'm just gonna do the little smidge of a heal. And similarly with super potions, it's like, oh, it's just a little chunk there. Okay, I got the perfect item for you. Yeah.
Resource management.
Feedback heard. We'll maybe consider some retuning of those items.
All right, sounds good. I'm satisfied.
All right. Moving into more PvP focused questions. When it comes to updating the move pool for each seasonal update, how does your team go about making their decisions? Is there a goal in mind when you're updating the move pool in terms of like which attacks get more or less powerful, things like that?
Yeah. So this one is a really interesting one. It in part depends on where we are within the play Pokemon circuit as well, now that we've really deeply integrated with that initiative. So as an example, as we get closer to Worlds, we're maybe a little bit less I don't know, a less crazy with the types of things that we're willing to experiment with, because we don't really want to introduce something that like totally breaks things and is like, oh, actually that was like way off in terms of tuning and balance. And, now the World Championships is going to be a worse experience for that. So, our willingness to experiment with risky things goes down a little bit as you get closer to Worlds. But then also the flip side of that is, immediately after Worlds, we're much more willing to say like, hey, let's actually like completely, flip things on its head and break things and, just have a completely new meta shakeup.
Just
like we did.
Send Vigoroth down into the ground.
I'm still sad about that one.
Well, we can only stay at the top for so long. But yeah, I think that it's one of the really fun and unique things about Pokemon Go is we have the ability to make these adjustments over time and, bring things into the limelight that you might have never seen otherwise. I still remember, I can't remember which tournament this was, but when, oh my gosh, why am I blanking on the name of the electric bug bus? Charge-a-Bug, yes. When Charge-a-Bug hit, the like top usage for the first time at a regional, a lot of like main series games players were like, making jokes about that, like, what the heck is going on over there in like Pokemon Go world, But like, I think that's what's like cool about Pokemon Go and really special is like, there are these Pokemon that are just out of left field that are just destroying the competition that, is not something that you see anywhere else. And so, so we have a lot more appetite for really shaking things up after Worlds, as we saw, this past September. And then, we still keep things really aggressive, I would say, for the most part, for most of the year, up until, the pre-Worlds season is maybe a little bit less aggressive on the amount of changes that we do. We also look at, sort of like usage numbers and different win rates within Go Battle League, in addition to what we see in the play Pokemon circuit. And while there's definitely some similar trends that you see, there are things that are more effective in one versus the other, and so we try to keep that into consideration as we think through things. As I mentioned earlier too, when you have a designer that's looking at the entirety of a season, they know what new Pokemon are coming out, or what Pokemon are going to be featured in Community Day and whatnot, and so they'll really layer that into the consideration set as well of how do we make that more exciting, from a PvP standpoint, or here are the Pokemon that we're going to include in the Team Go Rocket rotation, and which ones make a lot of sense here. So yeah, I would say that those are a lot of the inputs that go into that decision-making process. I also, just personally have a group of friends that I love talking shop with PvP, and they definitely like to feed me lots of suggestions and whatnot, and some of those definitely I would say inspire some conversations within the team as well. So yeah, if you ever have some type of a suggestion or something that you want to see in the game, never hesitate to reach out to me. I always, am willing to lend an open ear, and we might not take all of the suggestions, of course, but at least, you never know when you might spark a little bit of an idea on our side. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess to piggyback off that, because you said some stuff that really lends itself into this next question, which is we would love to hear more about the team's process for adding new attacks into the game. So deciding if something's going to be a faster or charged attack, or the power and energy and the turn duration of the attack, etc. What does that decision look like?
I think specifically for this, for Charm, because if you play the main series, Charm doesn't do anything. Charm's one of those attacks. If you played like I did, I was never into the super competitive for the video game. For me, I was the kid who was if it doesn't do damage, I'm getting rid of it. Only attack and just blast through the game. That was me. So having Charm be just this oppressively powerful fast attack in Go is really funny to me.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you bring Charm up, because the way that we did the initial move balancing and allocation of fast versus charge move and whatnot when PvP first released in Pokemon Go is quite different from how we approach things today, right? And I will say that in Charm's case, well, let me take a step back. So for the most part, we do try to stay fairly true to the source material, right? If something is a super high damage nuke in the main series games, we often will try to keep that same spirit of the move in Pokemon Go. Now, in Charm's case, if you look at the number of fairy type moves available in Pokemon just as a whole, it's quite limited compared to other move types or other Pokemon types. And so, that was one where we deviated quite a bit from the main series, but it was a little bit out of necessity, I would say, in order to have sort of a well-rounded slate of moves across the different types. But yeah, when it comes to new moves, like I mentioned, a lot of times we will take inspiration from the source material and try to think about does this seem like it would be something that's more in the spirit of a fast move, or is this something that feels a lot heavier hitting and is going to be something that's in the charge move category. And then there are things that don't fit either, that we'll try to think of creative ways to make those come to life in Pokemon Go. So the one that comes to mind for me is Obstruct, right, for Obstagoon. In Pokemon Go, it behaves very differently than in the main series, because in the main series it's not really a damaging move, right? And so but it has like very, unique properties that we wanted to try to still stay true to. So yeah, that's kind of the gist of it, I would say. There's no like formula that we look at to, just apply across everything. A lot of times it is very much a matter of interpretation of, who's, designing this at the time. And, and we also just like talk as a team about how is this going to affect things as a whole, and, the overall like balance of the metagame and whatnot too. So.
Very cool. It seems like a lot more like figuring out the new attacks is a lot more of a creative pursuit, where figuring out the balance is much more of a technical. Like you're kind of using both sides of your brain to try to figure out like the move update.
Yeah. I think that's a good way of framing it for sure.
Thinking about the Go Battle League cups, I know I love having the cups that are 2 weeks long, when it's especially like a cup that I really enjoy, like Love Cup. What kind of goes into like deciding if a cup is a 1 week or a 2 week? That was another question we got in from a listener.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have like a scientific response to this one, but I guess what I'll point back to is, what I mentioned previously around, every season we have a team working on that season, and we have specific leads that are assigned to each. And, based on the cadence of different events that we have in the game, or, the frequency at which we'll be introducing new moves during that season, those things will oftentimes influence, how often we're doing the cup rotations. But it is funny too, because I think if there was like a clear best option here, we would stick with that. But whenever I talk to people about it, you get folks like yourself who are like, why don't we just always do 2 week rotations? And you get other folks who are like, oh my God, 2 weeks is so long. I get so bored by the end of that. Like, I want something new, So yeah, lots of strong opinions on this thing. And I genuinely don't think that there's a right answer. And whatever seems to make the most sense for that particular season is what we want to go with.
All right, so occasionally we have fun conversations about changes or additions that we'd like to see to the mechanics of PvP that would make it more interesting, competitive, complex. Some suggestions that we've this is really bunching in together of a lot of different questions that we were asked. Some suggestions that we've seen, new settings for battles, like the background, adding special conditions, a second fast attack or a third charged attack, Dynamax in PvP, augmented reality in PvP, a show 6 format, a team format. Are any of those things that have ever been considered, or would you personally like to see in the game, and how feasible would they be to implement?
Yeah. So, I'll definitely preface this answer by saying, nothing that I'm about to say here should be taken as indication of like, oh my gosh, they're going to be building XYZ in Pokemon Go, right? So yeah, unfortunately, I will not be like breaking any news.
That would be amazing, though.
Yes, yeah.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, right. But I think the way that I would answer this is to just chat a little bit philosophically about how we think about any new feature that we build in Pokemon Go, whether that's for PvP or otherwise, which is we really try to actually, I'll frame it this way. We have a finite team, and that team is constantly working on new fun features, systems, updates, etc. in Pokemon Go. And we're always trying to think about like, what is going to give us the most impact for the investment that we're like putting into those things. And so that will oftentimes really help mold our roadmap for the game. And so a lot of times when I hear things about like suggestions for new updates to PvP specifically, a lot of things that I hear are so enticing to me personally as someone who has spent years not just in Pokemon Go PvP, but in Pokemon PvP, in Street Fighter, in random like first person shooter competitive games, right? Like I'm a very competitive person, as I mentioned, at heart. And a lot of the ideas and suggestions that I hear from players, I'm like, oh my God, that would be so fun and incredible. But I also have to like set my own personal desires aside in this role that I'm in, and for this game specifically, and think about the holistic experience for the totality of our player base. And the reality is, we've always tried to take the approach, not just in Pokemon Go PvP, but in Pokemon Go as a whole, of really creating something that feels very approachable and simple for people, but hopefully something that has like some depth under the surface, right? A lot of the things that we talked about earlier in the podcast that I'm personally like very thrilled about how like PvP turned out is, at the surface level, it seems like quite simple. You're tapping on the screen, you charge up your charge attack, and you use your charge attack. You have two shields that you can deploy, and you're only picking 3 Pokemon to bring into a party. But then, one level deeper, there's like so much depth to like all the micro decisions that are made throughout the course of any given battle. And so we really do want to maintain that spirit of, ensuring that PvP in Pokemon Go feels very approachable to the more casual player, but, has that depth for people that want to get into that. So, a common one that I hear a lot is like status effects. I'd be very interested to bring status effects into Pokemon Go, but how do we do so in a way that is intuitive and makes sense, and is something that isn't going to feel like a big barrier to entry for someone who's like, oh, I might be interested in PvP. Like, I've never done a battle thing before. And the more information that someone needs to like digest in order to like get into something like that, the harder it can be for people, especially who are like newer to that system. So yeah, it's definitely a tricky balance, and it's something where like, again, I have to set aside my own, like, as a hardcore like competitive battler, like, oh my God, this would just be so cool if we could do XYZ things, and think really about like what is best for the overall like health of the game, and the player base that we have in Pokemon Go. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question, and I wasn't like tiptoeing around it too much.
It does. Yeah, no, and I can relate to that. I've said it before on the podcast about when it comes to the main series competitive scene, like that, having never stepped into it myself, it just seems like such a forest. Because
Right.
like, yeah, you've got, not only do you have all the different attacks and what they can do like you would in Go, but then you've got your status effects, you've got your held items, you've got abilities as well, you've got
Yeah.
IVs are a thing like in Go, but then they get so much more complicated, and there's breeding involved as well.
Right. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
like, I totally get what you're saying in that, like, adding too many different elements can just make it seem like it's just in the too hard basket for someone who might have otherwise jumped in and joined the game.
Yep, for sure. Now, that being said, I don't want this to also mean that I'm saying we're never going to make updates to Pokemon Go PvP. Like, that's absolutely not the case. And but when we do make updates, we want to do so very thoughtfully and in a way that like doesn't jeopardize the approachability of that system for players.
So in some of your past interviews, in prep for this, I did go back to the Zoe interview and the interview you did with Battle Cats, which they're both fantastic, and I recommend anyone listening to this to go back and check them out. In both of those interviews, you mentioned things in the context of years a lot. So, for example, this thing is a big focus for us this year, and last year we focused more on this. It just got me wondering, like, is that generally how you approach the long-term development of the game? Is like you go into 2025 thinking this is going to be kind of our core focus this year?
Yeah, we definitely do try to have these broad themes annually, I would say, but it's not a rigid thing, right? We're not saying that like everything that we do is going to be focused on this specific theme, but it definitely helps give us a little bit of guidance and direction for the team, and also helps ensure that we don't go too long with the game, ignoring different facets that we think are like, very core to the DNA of Pokemon Go. So as an example, 2025, we're really thinking about social, right? And how are we going to, continue to make Pokemon Go a more social game that connects people? And so a lot of, what you'll see from us over the coming months for the rest of the year will be ways that, you can hopefully better connect with, other players, and, improve, different things in the game to do so. So yeah, nothing to share on specifically what it is that we're building, but, I'm happy to share that like that is the general theme that we're thinking about in this year. Now, of course, that, like I said, as an example, Go Tour, we're putting together this event pass, right? What does that have to do with social? Not really anything, other than, you come to a live event where there are tons of people and you can play together. So it's not like a hard rule of like everything that we build that year has to like, pile onto that. But it's something that, we want to like try to be a little bit mindful about and each year, lean into. So.
Yeah.
All right. Our last listener question. It's kind of like the one of them before where we kind of combined a theme of several questions we got. And it's about the community feedback process. And I think that's a good one, good listener question to end on. So kind of like, this is kind of a layered question. I'll go through the whole thing and then I'll give you a chance to piece through it. But so when a player sends feedback in via the app, like they go into the game app, they go into the help section and send feedback. Like, how does that get seen by the right people? Also, are there certain prominent community members that act as like mouthpieces for the player base that have a more effective, like direct line of communication? And then how effective is social media for a player wanting to have their voice heard? So again, kind of that 3-tiered. So like feedback in the app, feedback via prominent community members, and then feedback on social media.
Yeah. I guess that, at a meta level, I would say your voices generally are very heard, right? So when you submit something in the app, our player experience team actually compiles sort of like a monthly update for the broader team in Pokemon Go that shares, different themes and whatnot that they're hearing through, player support and whatnot. And, for better or for worse, a lot of people at Niantic are always reading what people are talking about and posting on, social media, Reddit, things like that. And then, of course, something that I really like to emphasize is just my own like lived experience and conversations that I have with real people in the real world. I think it can often, we don't just see this in Pokemon Go. I see this in almost any gaming community I've ever been a part of, that like when you are online and when you are, almost like anonymously behind a username or whatever, it's very easy to let the most negative feelings about things come out. Right. And it's also very easy, and like the sort of like social media algorithms that have been built over the years have created a system where you were like by design funneled into an echo chamber, right? It's like they've, like I said, the social media platforms are designed to keep the engagement up. They want you to, find other people that have, similar interests and backgrounds as you to like, echo off of each other and, keep that sustained. And so a lot of times when I hear this type of question, I think it comes from a place of maybe seeing a lot of other people say like similar things and feel like those things aren't heard or acknowledged or recognized. And the reality is like we hear all of those things and we like take that feedback into a heavy consideration, but it's one part of the whole consideration set, right? And when I actually am able to go to a live event, or if I go and play community day and bump into other players out there and I have an opportunity to talk to people, you hear a very different set of experiences and feedback. And I don't mean that in like, oh, everybody's just saying like roses and sunshine and rainbows, positive things about Pokemon Go. Like, no, I get lots of critical feedback in person as well, but it can be quite different from the types of critical constructive feedback that we see online. And so so yes, the short answer to the question is we are listening to and reading and digesting feedback from lots of different sources, but the sort of like longer version of that answer is more of a like trying to understand even the intent of when I hear questions like that. I do think that oftentimes people, myself included, can get caught in echo chambers, and it's really important to try to like break out of that and understand that there are lots of different lived experiences, and especially in a game like Pokemon Go where there are tens of millions of people all around the world enjoying the game in different ways, that like trying to understand collectively how that all plays together is really challenging. And but we do our best to listen and create experiences that we think are going to be widely loved by people everywhere. And I do think generally we do a decent job at it, right? Like this game still has a very active and vibrant community. We're almost like 9 years in. That's not something that you see in any other game out there, frankly. It's like a very short list, right? You can probably count on one or two hands the number of games that have survived this long at this level of popularity. And we've only been able to do so because we've really tried to take a more holistic approach to the feedback and direction that we have within the game. So hopefully that's a helpful answer. I guess the other thing I didn't touch on, that was part of the question, was like, are there specific community members who we listen to more than others? So we I would not say that we emphasize specific community members over others, but there's a reality, right, of like if someone bumps into me or someone else at Niantic, like I probably will like listen. And so that is an opportunity that folks in like maybe the community ambassador program have more of an opportunity to chat with different people at Niantic, especially Kestrel and folks on the community management team. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're like listening to that input any more than we would what we're seeing on social media or from people that we talk to in person, face to face. And I do also know that like sometimes I've seen players blame like content creators or whatever for like, hey, how come you didn't tell Niantic about this, or like why are you still supporting Niantic even though like we really are upset about this decision that was made and whatnot. And it's like, they're just players at the end of the day. Like I hate to say it, as much as I like a lot of folks in the content community, content creation community, like I'm not giving any extra credence to their feedback than I would from all these other sources, because we don't ever want to be designing the game for like a small subset of people. We want to really be thinking about what everybody's experience is like, and optimize for that.
Yeah, fantastic answer. All of the answers you've given today has really, for me personally, helped just understand a lot more about how the game works, the decisions that go into creating this environment that we spend so much of our time and energy on. And so I'm really appreciative that you've been able to set some of this time aside on such a busy schedule to help give us that information.
Yeah, no, this is, really enjoyed the conversation today, and, thanks for inviting me on, and especially for, such a special milestone for the podcast. And would love to chat again sometime.
Yeah,
sure.
Thank you so much. And with that, we can start kind of closing out the episode. So listeners, if there was anything that we talked about today that kind of sparked another question, you can always write into pvpcorner@gocastpodcast.com. Lots of different things you could talk about between the different regional events we talked about. Go Tour, you can let us know if you went to Go Tour in LA and what your experience was, or how you're going to play the World event that's coming up shortly afterwards, or any of the different things if you have thoughts on any of the questions we chatted about today. So please feel free to write those in. Fish, can you tell us about some achievements that we can shout out today?
Yeah, so I run a community called Pallet Town PvP, and of course we have the GoCast podcast Discord community, and we like to shout out players in those communities that have hit milestones, personal milestones. So we want to give a shout out to Machoman, who hit veteran for the first time. GetsuFractal got their 500th win for the season. Maxotron and Unclebstud both hit Ace. Jester hit Legend, and Suziyah hit Expert. Well done to all those players. DPhiE, do you have anything to plug?
No, I want to shout out Machoman as well, because Machoman sent me a direct message just being so excited to hit that during Love Cup, and just a very sweet person. So excited for everybody to do that. I don't really have a lot to plug right now. My goal is to my plans for the weekend have changed a little bit as of like 2 hours ago, but my plan was to get back into streaming this weekend. I think I'm going to have to push it back one weekend more. But we're looking to get back in there, maybe make like a debut with the new season of Pokemon Go. That'll coming soon. So nothing too much new from me.
For me, Thursday nights, fairly consistently at the moment, been streaming my PvP battles, and of course, Sundays, Sunday morning US time, I'm still going through the 100 best games of all time list on the Story Mode Games YouTube channel. So this is my 7th session on Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. That's the one I'm playing at the moment.
Nice.
Is there anything that, Michael, you might want listeners to check out? Maybe a Twitter account or any projects that you're working on that you want people to keep an eye on?
Just a Go Tour, that's coming up. Obviously just a small subset of the total players this weekend in Los Angeles, but the following weekend will be the global experience. And we've been working really, really hard on this and trying to put together something, super fun for everybody. And please go out and play, and let me know on Twitter, or I guess Twitter would probably be the best place to reach me, at Michael Steranka, what you thought about your experience, and I'd love to hear it.
And that is our 200th show. If you would love to give us your feedback, then we love hearing from you as well. If you have any questions or suggestions for myself or DPhiE, you can direct it to pvpcorner@gocastpodcast.com. You can also send us a voicemail or physical mail to the GoCast PO Box. Take a look at the show description for the phone number and the PO Box address. In the show description, you can also click on More Fish or More DPhiE to take you to our other projects and ways to contact us. And don't forget to have a listen to the other 2 shows in this podcast feed, the main GoCast podcast to get news, tips, and community in the world of Pokemon Go, and the newest addition to the family, Star Piece, where Chris and Lachlan interview members of the wider Pokemon community. And we will speak to you next week. Michael, you're coming back, right? This is a weekly thing now.
I'll have to check my calendar. But yeah.
No, I think, Michael, you're going to sleep for like a month after.
I hope so. I really hope so.